Good evening. This is the March 17th Campbell Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. I'm Matthew Jew, the traffic engineer for City of Campbell. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 5:00 p.m. And roll call. It looks like David Soschord is here. Mark Nakamura is here. Matt Schroeder is here. Barton Smith is not here yet, but we'll see if he shows up. And from our staff in this room, we have.
I'm Todd Caperso, Public Works Director.
And
Joanna Thomason, Executive Admin.
yeah, and I see on the TV screen, Kathy Jaggy. I think you've attended our meetings in the past.
Yep, hi.
All right, welcome back. Okay, we'll move on to item 3. This is new for us. In the past, we have had an item called round the table discussion, but we're formalizing our process now to conform more with our other public meetings. It's now an item called oral requests. It's items that are not on our agenda, but if you want to bring to our attention anything, you can mention it, and we can't discuss it as a committee, but staff can take your feedback and investigate whatever the matter is. So does anybody have any oral requests, either from the public or from our committee?
Well, I have one, and I don't have all the details, but I did have requests from somebody in the neighborhood who had several concerns about the area, particularly south of Kirtner, east of 17th, between Kirtner and Camden. The biggest one and easiest to explain is the lack of crosswalks on Kirtner. You know, there's nothing between McGlinchey Lane and Bascom. And, you know, the traffic does come pretty hot and heavy there quite a few times. And, you know, you're lacking on sidewalks, and I think that's something that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
And there are some other concerns, but I'm waiting for some documentation on those. I walked around with them and he showed me things, but there's some other concerns as well.
Okay. I've jotted that down. Thanks for your feedback. Is there anything else?
Well, I did have a question about the Campbell housing and planning that's been happening for the last couple months. It seems like Campbell Ave between Bascom and downtown is going to have quite a few sites for housing, or they've been exploring it as a possibility. And I know that the Greylands of that office part, we had a discussion a while back about allowing parking spots you know, for that development. There, I think we kind of briefly discussed that at a prior meeting last year. But I just want to make a comment. I really think that we shouldn't, any developments that go along Bascom, I would really advocate not to have parking spots on the street. It just seems like with, you know, the traffic returning to normal, that section from 17 to really downtown is very busy. And this pretty, I mean, just even riding my bike down that street is getting kind of more challenging. So I would really advise maybe not allowing on-street parking for any future developments.
On which street again?
On Campbell Ave between 17 and downtown Campbell. And my other question was, there's new development that's kind of being prepped, you know, across from the park. I was wondering if there's any parking spots or on-street parking allowed for that development.
Where?
Am I allowed to answer?
Yeah, we can answer questions if they're just kind of incidental. We can't really get into having a policy discussion or making any decisions.
I think you're referring to the Crestley Homes development, which is on the south side of Campbell Avenue between Gilman, where the park is located, and Dillon in the west. There are plans for on-street parking. The current curb line is going to be pushed to the south so that the curb lines at the corners remain in the same location. And then there'll be like a 7 or 8 feet of on-street parking provided south of there.
Okay.
So that there are plans for that. It's consistent with our East Campbell Avenue master plan.
I do. Okay. All right.
Before I forget, you said along Campbell Avenue, don't have on-street parking between 17 and where?
Yeah, between 17 and downtown. So let's say at the start of where that bike box is. The only concern for me in that section is when you come under 17, cars really start to pick up, speed. And then there is a stoplight, at the park there. And I just think having parking, on-street parking before that stoplight could just add a little bit more busyness to, so the drivers have to focus if there's a bicyclist there or someone's pulling out, and they have to also pay attention to the stoplight. It's a lot of, busyness, thinking, and I think for bicyclists, it's not that safe. If there is on-street parking, and drivers have to pay attention to that.
Okay. We as staff can talk about it.
Yeah.
The other thing, about a year and a half ago, we did have a plan line study that was going to look into what the future would look like, but that got
They're getting defunded.
yeah. But good question though.
One thing I want to talk about for the next meeting is the possibility of putting in some signage under the bridge there for that kind of semi-blind corner on the creek trail, either like slow your speed or one of the mirrors. I don't remember if I sent you some photos, Matthew,
You did.
of what I was talking
I
about.
think you sent a photo and videos.
Okay, yeah, just like the approach going down into the tunnel, just something there to slow people a little bit. So for next meeting, maybe we can talk about that in detail.
Cool. Thanks for the reminder. Cool. 3 for 3. Any more? Next meeting, I'll have to remember to give you a heads up before the meeting that start collecting your thoughts.
Yeah, that was my bad too.
No. I need to remember.
Okay.
Because this is a new format. Okay. That's it. Okay. Next item is just the approval of the meeting minutes from our January 20th meeting. Did anybody have any comments or corrections? If not,
I was glad to see that my vote snuck in just before the technical difficulties. True. Oh, I mean, in shades of January 6th or whatever here,
you're on record now. You are the feedback chair. Okay. If there's no objections, like I understand motions, then we want to make motions to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second? Any discussion? Nay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'm opposed. Great. Moving along. Item number 5 is called ongoing projects. And let's go through them one at a time. 5A is the downtown pedestrian improvements. That's dealing with the Loop Street Civic Center Drive. There's plans for rectangular rapid flashing beacons to be installed at the intersection of Civic Center Drive and 2nd Street. Our maintenance yard has the equipment they're waiting for the weather to warm up. That will allow for when they move the crosswalk and they have to seal the pavement, the striping removal areas with a sealant that it can dry quickly. So that's in the works. A work order has already been prepared and it's in their hands. Harriet Avenue Sidewalk Project. Status is pretty much the same as the last meeting. The city has received authorization from Caltrans to proceed with construction. And there's overhead utility relocation work that is happening now and will continue until the early part of 2022. So it's happening. Third item has to do with the fiscal year 22 annual pavement maintenance project. In particular, what's relevant to the BPAC is the portion of work where sharrows are going to be installed on West Parr Avenue. And I will attempt to share the screen. This is our agenda packet, and part of, we're on this light item here. It's not here.
Part of the meeting packet.
Should have been.
Oh,
We got it. If you're talking about this.
open up the download. Go to the download side on the far right.
I think it's going to be the same thing.
Well, maybe not.
Part of the agenda that we received in the email.
Yeah, that's only, yeah, you're right. That's only two.
I'll tell you what, I will describe verbally what the plans show. We incorporated the comments that the BPAC made at the last meeting, which was they wanted the sharrows to be on the far side of the intersection on West Parr Avenue, just west of Winchester and just west of Capri Drive. And that's been incorporated, and what we did is we adjusted the locations of the adjacent sharrows so that we still maintain the maximum spacing. So we don't exceed the maximum.
Excellent.
Can I ask
So I
a
did-
quick question here, Matthew?
Sure.
Because I live like a block off of West Parr. So the proposal is for the sharrows to run from Winchester to where exactly? I'm sorry.
Olive Road, at the west end of the street.
Oh, okay. So I mean, all of West Parr essentially then.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
You had a beautiful drawing, but we're unable to share it. It's in color too.
But we can send it to her if you want to offline.
Okay, do that.
Great. Thank
Um,
you.
All right, the next project. Oh, I'll just leave the agenda up there. The next project is the citywide bike map and safe routes to school. We've made quite a bit of progress. I've been working with other public agencies who got interested and thought, hey, we'd like to tag along with City of Campbell for schools that are sharing either they're physically in Campbell, but have a, let's say, San Jose or Los Gatos mailing address, or vice versa. We had up to 7 Campbell Union School District schools in mind. Originally, our concept was going to be 2 particular schools, but when we started involving these other agencies, other municipalities, the number of schools grew. We've gotten to a point where we've got a pretty good scope of work for hiring a consultant to prepare these maps and do a lot of the legwork of collecting data from stakeholders, setting up camp in front of a school entrance, laying out a map, and having parents and students write down which streets do they use and why, or which streets do they want to avoid and why. So you're getting a lot of feedback, and it was really helpful. Got some help from the county public health department, and with Elisa Campbell, and Ying Smith from Los Gatos, and Ann Jasper from the city of San Jose. We're thinking, though, we probably need to trim the scopes so we don't bite off more than we can chew at one time. So we're still shaping the scope of work, but we've made a good amount of progress. I'm pretty happy with it. We were able to find some materials to have some idea of the cost. And yeah, so I'm really happy with the progress.
Are these for elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, all?
Let's see, there are 2, well, let me put it this way. Of the current 7, 2 are middle schools, the rest are elementary schools.
Oh, good.
But Todd and I were just talking about this recently, is we're thinking of scaling back so that maybe it'd only be 3 schools this round, but then the next fiscal year take on some more schools. And that'd be a lot easier to manage. And because of that, I think what we're envisioning is 1 middle school, which probably.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
We're thinking of Rolling Hills Middle School because Los Gatos is involved. The second probably would be Rosemary Elementary School, which borders with San Jose. And the third one also borders with San Jose is Forest Hill Elementary School. Actually, all schools are interesting, but those in particular, yeah, they have different issues. A lot of pedestrians and bicyclists for Rolling Hills Middle School, a lot. Forest Hill is just interesting. We did a traffic calming project a couple of years ago. I'm interested to see what the feedback is. And we've got this pedestrian hybrid beacon at one of the intersections. I'm curious if there's any feedback about that. And then for Rosemary Elementary School, it's just an interesting location. Probably need something I probably need to include in the scope of work is be able to have bilingual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did a project up there not that long ago too. Some
It's true.
pedestrian enhancements right on the intersection of
Rosemary
Eden and Rosemary.
Right. We put in flashing beacon system there and bulb outs. And,
That's the one on Hamilton.
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. And that's got quite a bit of walk up traffic.
So for those schools where you work with other cities, is that cost sharing or like how?
Yeah, we're
How's
trying
that gonna work?
We're trying to work that out too. We are thinking of using something analogous to what we use with paving projects, is having some kind of cost share agreement, but have a markup for our having to manage the project
Okay.
on behalf of the other agencies. yeah, there's that.
Yeah, if all the maps could be translated, not just Rosemary, I think that'd be good. Just
Let me write that down.
in the spirit of equity, if funding's available.
Yeah.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what are the city of Campbell's like languages, like alternate languages? Is it just Spanish? I know San Jose's got like a large Vietnamese population. Like, is it primarily Spanish, secondary, or?
I would say primarily Spanish from what I know from the schools. For sure, Rosemary.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Um, I'm not as familiar with the other schools and their
gotcha.
populations.
Well, that all sounds good.
Yeah. Just remembering something about the scope as well. The bike safety tips.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
That's right.
actually bike camp dead. Right. Are there any questions thus far? We still have one more project to go. Okay. So very happy about item 5D. 5E is the Campbell Priority Development Area, PDA, Enhancements Project. Currently, we have funding from the One Bay Area Grant, Cycle 2, to design some downtown pedestrian and bicycle improvements. We still have not received approval from we received approval from Caltrans. We're waiting for federal approval from the FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, to approve the funding for the design phase only. Once we get that, then we can approach Caltrans and say, can we proceed with the design phase and start process by hiring a consultant to design the project. Later on in this year, there will be a call for projects for the third cycle of the One Bay Area Grant, where there will be an opportunity to compete for construction funds. I was hoping we'd be farther along as far as getting the design started, but it's unfortunate. We're just waiting and holding pattern with the FHWA. We should be happy that we even have the funding for the design phase.
And this is for the intersection down there,
Yeah, it's
primarily that.
It's
One spot?
multiple locations, starting with, yes, squaring off with the corners at Civic Center.
Oh yeah, and then the crosswalk at Cartoons, right?
Yes, that one too, Orchard City and Central, as well as some intersection improvements at Civic Center 2nd and Civic Center 3rd.
All right.
Yeah. We've got to get those construction funds. So that's the update there. Is we're still waiting for FHWA approval. Okay, item number 6. Now this is
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we go back to
correct.
5D?
Sure.
The citywide bike map, is that finalized after all those, but not all those, but like the few edits that we commented on?
I will say it's at a point where you've incorporated your comments. I'm not sure if that's the finished product.
That's the one that's going into the proposed general plan, right?
That, as well as right now it's in a format that it looks like a GIS map.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure, is that the product we want to be? It could be, because
Well,
VTA's map is.
It probably is the finished product for what we're going to get out of that effort. But if you're getting at, can we end up with something that's a little more user friendly someday? That I'd like to get to that point, but I don't know that it's going to come out of what we need to do to wrap up the general plan. It might, fall out of that as a work item. But
Okay.
I agree that it'd be nice to get something that's a little more user friendly, interactive.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
Okay. Um, So going to the next item, number 6, TDA Article 3, grant call for projects. BTA just released a memorandum that calls for projects for TDA grants. Every year, we get an allocation. It's a percentage of the state sales tax revenue. And usually our allocation for bike and pedestrian related construction projects, it ranges between $35,000 and $45,000. But this year, the allocation is really surprising. It's $56,869, which is higher than it's been in past. This is the highest I've ever seen it for county. It's the allocation is based on a formula for the county. The county gets so much money, and then the funds are distributed by population. Part of the agenda package was a list of projects, which unfortunately we cannot show. I'll tell you what, I will read off the project concepts. What usually happens when we submit a grant application, which is this year is due April 15th, is we submit a project for the upcoming fiscal year, but it's a compilation of different concepts so that there's enough flexibility that if there's one particular concept that has a more of a pressing need for funding, urgency, then we can use those funds for that particular purpose. So we're not like locked into 4 projects. Each project has a certain dollar amount because it'd be very hard to be correct with the estimate. Anyway, I will read off. There are 10 different project concepts. Now, we're not going to do all 10, but this gives you an idea too. Some of these are concepts that we use year after year because it's always helpful to have these TDA funds available for these purposes. One is to use the funds for shared lane markets or for sharrows, installing sharrows. The second is to retrofit our existing traffic signals for ADA compliance. I'll give you an example. From time to time, we'll get a request from, let's say, someone who is sight impaired to install pedestrian signals. So the third is to install bike lanes, green bike lanes, or bike boxes anywhere in the city that's consistent with our general plan and or the BTA's countywide bike plan. In the past, we've used these funds for the bike box. Actually, let's say we could have used it for the bike box on Campbell. Okay, the fourth concept came up a couple of years ago when the city of San Jose approached us with the idea of bike lanes on Santa Moschino Road. They had just done a road diet north of Campbell, and then to continue with bike lanes from the North City limits south to probably Bucknell. Then it becomes San Jose again. That was a concept that we were ruminating on. The fifth concept is related to the prune yard. We received $50,000 from the prune yard expansion project from the developer to help convert what's currently a signed bike route on Baskin Avenue to a bike lane with possibly some portions being green bike lane on Baskin Avenue. And also possibly some green pavement, bike lane pavement markings on Campbell Avenue in front of the prune yard. We're only halfway through the list. The number 6 is Harriet Avenue Sidewalk Project. Now, that project is going to be constructed this summer. So we're proposing to include it just in case if there's a pressing need for additional funds for that project. That these funds would be, the project would be eligible for these funds. Number 7 is Winchester Camden pedestrian improvements. This was proposed for 2 different reasons. One is there is a paving project coming up on Camden Avenue. The portion of Camden Avenue that's east of Winchester, where a lot of the tow truck companies are, Timber Cove, the mobile. Sure, the mobile home community is located right at the corner of Winchester and Camden. It's a little murky about where pedestrians can walk, the crosswalk location and all. Okay, number 8 is the annual street maintenance project 22 BB. That's the West Par Avenue Sharrows that we were discussing earlier. And it would be used not only for the Sharrows, but possibly curb ramps, because when we install or when we repave a street, we also bring the street to ADA compliance. Number 9 is Hamilton Avenue bike lanes and markings and curb ramps. Next fiscal year, I believe, the plan is to repave Hamilton Avenue.
What are the limits on that?
East city limits.
All of them?
West city limits.
Really?
Yes.
How long is that gonna take?
Sometime.
It'll probably be 3 years worth of funding like we did on Winchester.
Okay,
So next year, fiscal year 23 will likely be the design phase. And then the construction will be over either fiscal year 24 or 25. We did a section of Winchester west of the expressway, maybe in the last 5 or 6 years. So that end doesn't need it as much of a treatment as what you're going to see on the rest. It's going to be very similar to what you saw on the Winchester project.
okay,
So there'll be a lot of dig out, there'll be a lot of wedge grinding, there'll be some reconstruction of some of the median islands. But as part of that, we want to make sure that we get in, as much of a bike and ped, make it as bike and ped friendly as we can along the way.
so any parking removal or any I guess probably just parking removal in order to accommodate a good buffer or stuff like that?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, there's a couple of blocks in question that we have to look at for parking, but
Okay.
because I don't know that we had, it's almost like the comment about Campbell Avenue, right? There's certain sections out there that you can't do at all, so we may have to revisit what the priorities are.
Exactly, I'm thinking once you get west of, oh god, where Mervin's used to be, and they got the big median out there.
Out by the Safeway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I think there's already a decent bike lane over there.
I think
For that section, I think.
Is that there is?
Yeah.
there's bike lane already there.
Okay,
I'm like the name of the street starts with Marathon.
Marathon, that's right.
But I've jotted down your comment though. Yeah.
And I should also add that a portion of that, I want to say east of Bascom will be joint with San Jose, right? That's a joint ownership, right? East of Bascom to our city limit then.
The northern half of Hamilton Avenue, east of Bascom is in San Jose.
Oh, really? Okay. So east of Bascom to Lee, can we get in a bike lane there? Like
I think it's,
a traditional bike lane or something?
I think it's fairly doable east of Bascom.
It's fairly wide.
There are portions we have to investigate. I think there's some on-street parking.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for San Jose. so-
Yeah, we'd have to talk with them about the westbound side. The eastbound side, we have a little more, difficult, but you know, San Jose is pretty bike friendly.
Yeah.
So we'll certainly see what we can do as we get into design.
That would be awesome. I mean, eBay on the north, so no one
I
could like
don't
park in
know if
there.
there's any on-street parking.
Okay.
I just can't recall it exactly, but I don't think there is.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the further east you go, east of Lee, there's some pockets.
Yeah, I think, yeah, as you pass like the Safeway and start to go towards Roseland.
Yeah, our ownership or jurisdiction ends at
First,
yeah.
center line first,
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
So it's before Meridian.
right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any parking to first.
It gets narrow in there, though. I mean, that's we got much less right of way to work with.
Whatever can be accomplished would be
Right.
great.
I know.
Whatever's
As we go west, it
realistic.
seems like we have more room to play with. right?
Okay.
The east sections are a little tight.
Okay,
Yeah, I like Matt's idea. I think the only challenge going east on Hamilton to Lee is that turn onto Lee gets a lot of traffic or
Yeah,
it's very
it
fast
does.
and sharp. So that'd be great if you could kind of slow that down
Yep.
to another bike lane.
okay, just to
There'll
catch up.
definitely be some green bike lane in there, right? Those conflict points. I could see that happening.
We love that.
Just catching up, David, we were just recapping the concept of Hamilton Avenue. So it's the entire stretch of Hamilton from west city limits to east city limits. And then finally, the 10th concept is the Campbell PDA Enhancements Project, which we just described. It's the bike and ped improvements in the historic downtown. Right, we would submit these concepts as under one project name, call it the Campbell Bicycle and Pedestrian Project, fiscal year 22-23. It's what we've been doing for years. I think the suggestion, originally it was suggested by UTA staff because it provides us flexibility. What I'd like to do is ask if the BPAC approves of this concept, could someone make a motion to approve?
So these projects are just a part of like these aren't prioritized in any way, right? It's like, hey, here's what we can pick from.
Right, and the formal, what I've said in past council reports is staff would submit these project concepts as one project called the Campbell Bicycle and Pedestrian Project fiscal year 22-23 to simplify bookkeeping of TDA funds and allow the city the flexibility to use the TDA funds for whichever project concept has the most pressing
Love it.
for funding.
Sounds good.
I got a couple little questions. One is, remind me at least again, what was the larger dollar amount that you were saying the city is getting? Anticipating?
Right, I'll read it off. It's $56,869.
Okay, and that's a 1-year allocation, so it was somewhat less typically. I mean, that's not going to go real far on this list. I mean, Campbell Avenue, or Hamilton Avenue, I would assume would absorb that alone potentially for many years.
That's true. So,
Well, just wanted to be that I was understanding that right. I mean, I understand the virtues of having flexibility. The other thing I did want to question as soon as I looked at this at home, your definition of sharrows, where did that come from? It even seemed to conflict with something else I saw and something else in the packet. Is that really how you define and understand sharrows?
Let me read off. And which part you don't agree with. Shared lane markings, also known as sharrows, are used to assist bicyclists with lateral positioning in a shared lane with on-street parallel parking in order to reduce the chance of a bicyclist impacting the open door of a parked vehicle. This concept would address gaps in bike lanes on arterials and streets that carry school bicycle traffic and would continue the work performed in previous fiscal years. Is there a part that you don't agree with?
Well, it says they are used to assist bicyclists with lateral positioning. To me, that's not the point. And I mean, even on the next page here, I see it says bicycle shared lane markings, sharrows, are they not to designate the cars that bicyclists have some rights within those lanes? And is that not a more significant thing than to tell the bicyclists where they're supposed to be in the lane? I don't get it. And actually, when I see sharrows over on the right side of the lane, to me, it's very disturbing, to be honest.
I
Okay,
think that's the problem that we have on Winchester right now, is that the sharrows are not necessarily indicative that we get to take the lane. They're especially going north on Winchester between Knowles and Santa Moss Expressway. They're positioned way far over to the right. In some cases, actually, they kind of move around as you go north on Winchester. And actually, it's kind of funny because the screen on my Tesla actually puts them in the middle of the lane instead of putting them where they're actually painted on the road. So instead of indicating that we have the right to take the lane, it kind of indicates to the drivers that that's where our place should be, is in this kind of false bike lane that is kind of over to the right side of the road, and that's where we belong. And I know there's been some interesting Twitter discussions about the Winchester sharrows. And I was actually kind of expecting somebody to pop up at this meeting, but I guess he didn't show up. So yeah, the sharrows should be something that indicates to drivers that, hey, we can take the lane if we need to take the lane. And it's okay for us to be there rather than relegate us to the side of the road.
I think they could serve as both. I mean, we're talking about a definition here. I don't think it's that important to like say, hey, no, these are more for drivers so that they know that they're sharing the road as opposed to informed cyclists. I think they're both important. And for something like this, I don't think that the distinction is like that critical, but I see what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, these things are on the ground to inform drivers from a cyclist perspective that, hey, there are going to be bicyclists around here, so be alert. The language as it's written kind of makes it seem like it's like, so hey, cyclists, watch out for cars, as opposed to the reverse. But It's just one instance.
I'll say too, if I had to write this again, I would have quoted from the manual on uniform traffic control devices, which is more two-sided. This seems to present one side, and maybe for lack of space or whatever, we didn't include everything because there's many reasons for sharrows, and yeah, this isn't necessarily going to be the definition for sharrows.
But in the future, that might be helpful if like a definition was provided from MUTCD or NACDO even, or some sort of like official document. I think that would be useful for everyone.
Okay,
Okay, well, I wasn't suggesting that I wouldn't support this item or, that language in this, but it is a sore point for me, just generally.
I understand because it does seem kind of one-sided. Okay. In order to be eligible for TDA funds, the application includes a question whether the BPAC supports the nominated project. So does the BPAC support the projects and the proposed concepts? And if yes, I'd like to entertain a motion.
One more question. Would you still be presumably coming back to the committee when, actual funding is used, or is this sort of the final approval? Or, not that we're actually controlling, but I mean.
Well, we can let you know if and when the funds are being used, or if there's a council report that will designate, let's say, the funds to be used. It happens in previous years where we have had what they call a budget adjustment to move the funds for TDA grants to a particular project. We can definitely inform the BPAC when that happens. Other times it can be very day-to-day, I guess we call it ministerial action, where if somebody, like I said, as an example earlier, if someone makes a request for all pedestrian signal, I suppose we could let you know, but it's something that is more like a day-to-day action.
Well, I understand that, and actually, I think it's the kind of thing that you have been reporting on kind of an ongoing basis, but I mean, for example, if the money is used on San Tomas Aquino bike lanes and then it's gone, then we understand that that's where the money went. And obviously everything else is waiting for something else in terms of funding. That's fine.
Okay. So
Are you suggesting that we rank them or like?
No,
Just,
no. I don't think that's
okay.
being offered to us, nor would we be, would that make sense, in my opinion, or
Okay.
would be ready to do that. So I will move approval of that, of this, if that's what you're needing here, as opposed to just us nodding.
all right.
Second.
All right. And more discussion. All those in favor say yes.
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 All right. That's unanimous. Okay. Item number 7 is nominations for the BPAC vice chair. David, you're eliminated since you're the chair. Would anybody, first of all, anybody like to be the vice chair? Essentially, it's filling the chairperson. Also, if there's support letters for grant applications. Chair or vice chair could be asked.
I'll take it. I would like, but sorry, Mark. You can also,
The VTA.
okay. Well, then maybe it makes more sense for you to be the vice chair then, if you're the VTA representative. So I nominate Mark. You know,
Best bait and switch I've seen.
you know, 180. Nominated.
Okay, I'll second the nomination of Mark.
Wow. Didn't see that coming, did you, Mark?
No,
In some ways, I was thinking, well, then everybody has a role.
no.
Okay. Is it okay?
Sure.
You need to take
Or
a
I
vote.
accept her.
We do have a motion and a second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There we go.
No opposed, okay. Okay, item number 8, Mark, is the BTA BPAC update.
Yeah, so I have 4 months of updates. So, because I didn't get to present January.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, so actually in December, I was not a member on the BPAC. I was just a citizen or a member or someone just attending. So it was a pretty busy meeting in December. They had the election of the chair and vice chairperson. But they also did a presentation about the better bus stop updates, and especially on their projects that they're working on in 2022 to 2023. There was discussion about the Central Bikeway Design Concepts Workshop. It was pretty interesting. They shared a lot of renderings of how they were going to kind of put bike lanes and then bus stops, and how to kind of, in some cases, the bike lane, the bus stop was like on the edge of the lane, and there was a bike lane that would actually go behind it. So there was a lot of discussion about those designs. So it was pretty interesting. And then really in January, that was the first meeting where I was actually a voting member. And really the only action in that meeting was that we approved about $1 million for the Cupertino's Junipero Serra Trail segment for the fiscal year of 21 to 22. And that was a part of their TBA funds. And then there was also a presentation on the vehicle miles traveled tool. It's an online tool that you can kind of input addresses and kind of calculate the BMT. So that was kind of interesting to see. Let's see. And so that was January. That was a little bit more of a quiet meeting. And then for February, the VTA general manager and CEO, Carolyn Ganot, gave a presentation of what has happened in the past year, just kind of, their progress, kind of the projects that they're working on. So it was really nice to hear directly from her. I guess prior, they did a review, maybe sometime earlier in 2021. They had worked on the bicycle parking chapter of the bicycle technical guidelines. So we actually voted and adopted those guidelines for bicycle parking. So that was good. And then they also released the Transportation Systems Monitoring Program, the TSMP draft report. So we just got a kind of a preview of that document too. And then the last one was a presentation from the Santa Clara County Active Transportation Plan, which is currently in development. Really, they mentioned that they're focused really on the county expressways and roadways on the unincorporated areas of the county. And they also kind of showed some of the improvements to the key intersections throughout the county too. And so that was, it was very informative. They are working with a transportation consultant called Alta, who's kind of leading the effort in workshops and drawings and all, really doing all the prep and discovery work for that project. And then this was not part of that meeting, but there was on February 18th, there was a board of directors meeting that we were invited to, just as like a member, or not a member, but as a listener or something, where they really talked about, there was a big discussion about the light rail what to do with light rail in the future. So I guess it's mainly because light rail is one of the most expensive or, systems in the whole country to operate. So they're just looking for ways on how to kind of cut costs or how to keep running light rail in the future. So I just read the presentation and the notes for that. And then you may have seen some, in the Mercury News, there were some articles about that too. Yeah, but to me, every time I've ridden light rail from Campbell to San Jose or even the trains are pretty well filled like that all times of the day. So, yeah. And then, so actually, last week's BPAC meeting, the leadership presented their goals for 2022 and the priorities. And then we also approved the programming or the reprogramming of $3.239 million for the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 2 Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Federal Funds. There's 2 projects that we approved for. The one was for the Cupertino Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 Bikeway. And then the second one was the Los Gatos Creek Trail to the Highway 9 Trailhead Connector. So I think those were the 2 approved projects. And then we also approved, relinquishing the OBAG Cycle 2 funds up to about $919,000. Also for the Los Gatos to Los Gatos Creek Trail to Highway 9 Trailhead Connector. Yeah, and that was pretty much it for March. So pretty active for the last 4 months, I would say.
Very.
Yeah.
It's a buildup of information.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I was just wondering, I mean, would you like me to send like after the meeting to actually send an update like what I provided tonight? Or would you prefer, for me to kind of present only at the meetings?
Well, the meeting agendas and minutes are published online.
Okay.
So probably don't need to duplicate that work.
Okay.
But it's okay to update us in case we don't. I really reads it.
Okay. Yeah, and then I was thinking if there's anything like any surveys or events, I can also maybe share that out, via the email.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for attending those meetings.
Yeah.
It's a real important role.
Yeah, they're very formal in their meetings and those things.
More formal than we are tonight.
Yeah, like well, they say, well, chairperson, or they say member, not member of. So I haven't been part of a committee where they state the title before the last name.
I think when they have the meetings in person, you actually get the name for it.
Oh,
Maybe? I'm sure.
They did for the technical advisory committee.
Okay, well, I don't know about the bike committee.
yeah. And the
I
last
think they
thing.
probably do.
The last thing for the March meeting, since we were talking about priorities, we learned actually that of all the advisory committees for VTA, the BPAC is the only committee that does not have any interaction with the board, with the VTA board. So we had some discussion on how to maybe change that for the future. And there was just some concerns that not having that meeting with the board, that it just didn't really, show the importance of our work at the BPAC. So I think they're going to be looking into maybe coming up with a resolution for that in the future.
All right. Good. Thanks for the update. So item 9 is our next meetings. The date is May 19th. Which is a Thursday, 5 o'clock. Yeah. So unless there's anything else, I would say the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your attendance, Kathy. All right, everyone have a good night.
Okay.
Good, excellent, thanks.
All right.
How long are those meetings?
About maybe, the shortest one was like maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah.
The other one, like